الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. After praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending immense greetings and salutations upon the final Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, the main focus of our discussion bi'idhnillahi ta'ala today is to look at the role of the youth extracted from this famous hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam about 7 individuals or 7 types or categories of individuals being under the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whereby there will be no shade. That main theme of those young individuals that we find, as we're going to come to inshallah, that many of the youth, the young individuals, they think that they are the only ones who are facing the temptations or facing the desires or facing the difficulties. Yes, at times the level does change, the environment does have a big impact, but every single individual goes through those feelings or goes through those changes. That nafs of the individual has temptations placed within it. And the more the temptations are aroused, the more that the person places himself inside a tempestuous environment, the more that feeling begins to develop and the more the dangers begin to develop in the mind of the individual. And that's our role as teachers, as practitioners, is to take our people back to purity. That's the essence of a Muslim, and especially a young Muslim, to live a life of purity. It is very, very, very abnormal for a Muslim to live an immoral life, which unfortunately today has become a common practice amongst many Muslims, young Muslims especially, who live a life of disobedience, corruption, fawahish, illicit behavior, misconduct, and then they return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whereas, alhamdulillah, for many of our generation, you find it was against the norm for a person to fall into the fawahish, illicit behavior, the misconduct that we find, which unfortunately has become common practice. Possibly because there has not been enough engagement for many of us in trying to help our people. Whereas the Quran tells us, كُنْتُمْ خَيْرَ أُمَّةٍ أُخْرِجَتْ لِلنَّاسِ تَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَتَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. You are the best people ever raised up. You order the good and you forbid the evil. And then some 6 verses later that we find in Surah Ali Imran, verse 110, وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. That there arise amongst you a group of people who order the good and forbid the evil. So maybe there may have been a lapse in our ordering the good and forbidding the evil, that today we find the pitiful state of many of our shabab or many of our youth. Likewise, we know that we are surrounded by such slogans and statements which have been documented inside the Quran. أَخْرِجُوا آلَ لُوطٍ مِّن قَرْيَتِكُمْ إِنَّهُمْ أُنَاسٌ يَتَطَهَّرُونَ. Get rid of the people of Lut alayhi salam. They are people who want to be purified. So these are the slogans that we even find today. That people who are calling towards chastity, towards purity, living a good life, we need to expel these individuals. These are the fundamentalists, these are the radical individuals who are trying to destroy a good way of life, the enjoyment that we have. We need to get rid of these people. And unfortunately, we find not just from non-Muslims, we find this perception, this thought among some Muslims as well, that we need to remove these religious clerics or these religious people who are preventing us from following a life of desires and temptations. And thus the Quran warns the Muslims severely, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُحِبُّونَ أَن تَشِيعَ الْفَاحِشَةُ فِي الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ. Those people who love to spread vice, fawahish, bad behavior amongst those people who believe, لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ. For them will be a severe punishment in this world and likewise inside the akhirah. So that is a severe warning for Muslims to begin to think about their actions and their role and the impact of their actions upon the wider community around them. Likewise, we find that we need to develop this control, because to gain paradise isn't something easy as many of us may begin to think. Thus, if you go and read the book of Paradise in Sahih Muslim, but obviously Sahih Muslim, many of us may not be able to complete the reading of this magnanimous work. But there are certain chapters, certain kutub that we can go back and extract them and read them in our life to see the fawaid and the benefits. Read awalan, firstly, Kitabul Iman. Read the book of Iman by Sahih Muslim. That is how he begins his compilation. And as some of the ulama have gone to the view that Sahih Muslim in his tartib and his collection of ahadith at times is more fruitful than the Sahih of Imam Bukhari. Even though Imam Bukhari, without a doubt, is the strongest book in authenticity. But some are preferred because of the certain ahadith that Imam Muslim collects and the way that he makes his tartib and his collection. There are many fawaid that can be extracted from it. So read Kitabul Iman, the book of Iman in the beginning. Likewise, towards the end, read the book of Kitabul Jannah, wa sifatu na'imiha wa ahliha. Read the book of Paradise and the blessings and the characteristics of the people of Paradise. So then you begin to understand, what is my journey upon this earth. The Quran, as it begins by talking about Iman, الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. The believers, the muttaqun, the pious individuals are those who believe in the unseen, because the whole of the journey of the Quran is a journey of the unseen, things that we cannot imagine, we cannot see. Thus we find in the Hadith Qudsi, أعددت لعبادي الصالحين ما لا عين رأت ولا أذن سمعت ولا خطر على قلب بشر. I prepared for my servants, the pious individuals, what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, and the feeling, the perception, the thought hasn't come upon the heart or the mind of any individual. That's the journey of the whole life of a Muslim, that many things have been taken away from this earth. There are at times لَهُمُ الْبُشْرَى فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. Bushra is given to the believer because we need that encouragement to carry on inside our life. But the real bushra, the real ending, the real goodness is stored for the believer inside the akhirah. So thus we need to read about those blessings that have been restrained or kept away from us, so we know that our journey isn't a wasted journey. That's why you find the more weaker the iman regarding Yawm al-Akhirah, the more weaker the journey becomes. The more stronger one's aqidah, one's belief, one's perception, one's devotion, the more strength in that journey. وَأَلَّيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى وَأَنَّ سَعْيَهُ سَوْفَ يُرَى. Man will only have that which he struggles for, and every man will see his end result. The efforts that he made upon this earth will be shown by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Raddul fi'l. That is sunnatullahi ala al-ard wa fi as-sama'. Sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon this earth as well. You strive towards kufr, towards disbelief, you'll be entering into more kufr and disbelief. You strive for the dunya, you enter more into the dunya. You strive for the world and the pleasure of the world, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala open that dunya, those pleasures up for the individual. That's the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon the earth in general. And likewise, you find whoever strives for the akhirah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show that person the paths of this dunya, and likewise the path of the akhirah. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. Whoever strives in our paths, we will show them our paths, the paths of khair, of goodness upon this earth, and likewise the end result of those believers inside the akhirah. So this is the struggle that the man has to believe in, the struggle towards the akhirah. That's why the ulama they mention min fawaid, the benefits of belief in Yawm al-Akhirah, is a person begins to struggle even more, begins to strive even more in that return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the Quran mentions about those individuals who begin to follow actions, because some people, they believe that al-amal, actions, have got nothing to do with iman. Al-iman huwa tasdiqun bil-qalbi or iqraru bil-lisani. Some people believe as long as I have the conviction in my heart and I utter it with my tongue, فَهَذَا يَكْفِينِي, this is sufficient for me. This is khata, mistake in aqidah of Ahl Sunnah. وَالْعَمَلْ بِالْجَوَارِحِ, actions of the limbs, جُزْءٌ مِنَ الْإِيمَانِ. That is the aqidah of Ahl Sunnah in a nutshell. Belief, conviction inside the heart, testimony upon the tongue, and you carry out the actions to show that you are a believer. وَالْإِيمَانِ يَزِيدُ بِالطَّاعَةِ وَيَنْقُصْ بِالْمَعْصِيَةِ. Iman goes up via obedience and it goes down via disobedience. You understand this? You've understood the creed of Ahl Sunnah. Simple. As for this modernistic view that people, they come and they say that actions are not important. Why throughout the Quran is replete. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Except for those who believe and do righteous actions. You always find it put together. You never find it separated just about actions. So some of these modernistic Muslims are falling into the trap that it's just about believing. It's sufficient. This is a deviant view that eventually drifts you away from the creed of Ahl Sunnah. So the Muslims are those individuals who believe and carry out the actions. مَا سَلَكَكُمْ فِي سَقَرٍ, what made you end up going into Saqar? وَسَقَرْ مِنْ أَسْمَاءِ جَهَنَّمْ قَالُوا لَمْ نَكُ مِنَ الْمُصَلِّينَ. They said, we never used to bother praying. وَلَمْ نَكُ نُطْعِمُ الْمِسْكِينَ وَكُنَّا نَخُوضُ مَعَ الْخَائِضِينَ وَكُنَّا نُكَذِّبُ بِيَوْمِ الدِّينِ حتى أتانا اليقين. We never used to bother praying. We never used to feed the poor. We used to waste our time with the people, just wasting their time, until what? The time or the reality came upon us. بمعنى الموت. Then the person begins to reflect and begins to think. So why did these people end up going into Jahannam? They never used to bother praying in their life. So Muslims who believe I don't need to do certain actions, as long as my heart is clean, that is sufficient. What does the Quran say? The Quran says, أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقْ وَهُوَ اللَّطِيفُ الْخَبِيرُ. Does not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala know what He has created? And He is the most subtle, the most aware. These people in essence are actually challenging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by saying that my heart is clean. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has laid out hudud, laws, regulations. We have to follow those laws and regulations because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us and knows the nature of the human being. زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ وَالْبَنِينَ وَالْقَنَاطِيرِ الْمُقَنطَرَةِ مِنَ الذَّهَبِ وَالْفِضَّةِ وَالْخَيْلِ الْمُسَوَّمَةِ وَالْأَنْعَامِ وَالْحَرْثِ ذَلِكَ مَتَاعُ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَاللَّهُ عِنْدَهُ حُسْنُ الْمَآبِ. زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ. Man has been created to love what? Women, children, gold, silver, property, branded horses, the land. So a person comes along and says, well, the Sharia talks about this or talks about this, but I don't have that feeling inside my heart. There's no haraj in me mixing with women or talking to women or doing this or doing that, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows my heart is pure. Either you are lying or the Quran is lying. Simple. If you say the Quran is lying, فَهَذَا كُفْرٌ, takes you kharij anil millah, takes you out the fold of Islam. The Quran highlights the natural nature of the human being. So the Muslim should be vigilant of not falling into that trap to begin to challenge Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these people that we find, فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ فَزَادَهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا. In their hearts is a sickness, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has increased that sickness inside their hearts. That people begin to say that my Islam, fi qalbi, ma amal fi qalbi, everything is inside my heart. أو إن الله لا ينظر إلى صوركم ولا إلى أجسامكم ولكن الله ينظر إلى قلوبكم. They hide behind this hadith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't look at your faces, doesn't look at your image, doesn't look at your clothing, but rather looks into your hearts. But go back and collect all of the ahadith. وفي بعض الروايات that we find ولكن الله ينظر إلى قلوبكم وإلى أعمالكم. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks at your hearts and looks at what? Your actions. So this hadith goes against them. But they want to just take those ahadith, they try to defend, hide behind it that my actions have got nothing to do with my iman. So all of us need to strive in strengthening our iman and strengthening our actions in that return journey back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we read the book of Paradise, we begin to see the fruits of our iman. And obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَمَا تَوْفِيقِي إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. At-tawfiq min Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that gives the person the ability to carry out one's actions. And that's the person who becomes more grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. If you be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will increase that individual. Whether it be the world, but even more it will be those actions in coming closer and closer towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I advise myself and the rest of you respected brothers and sisters to read that chapter of paradise and likewise the chapter of Iman, and go back and read the various shuruhat of the ulama. Any other hadith that you want to extract from the book of paradise is a famous hadith when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created paradise and created the hellfire. And thus we find that when Jibreel alayhi salam came and he saw paradise, he said that whoever sees paradise, the beauty, the embezzlement, the glitter, the glamour, will want to do what? Dive straight into paradise. And whoever sees Jahannam, the anguish, the punishment, the torture, the rage, the fire, will want to do what? Stay away from it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, cover up paradise with obstacles. حُفَّتِ الْجَنَّةُ بِالْمَكَارِحِ. Surrounded, paradise is surrounded by obstacles. وَحُفَّتِ النَّارُ بِالشَّهَوَاتِ. Cover up the fire with shahawat. Every path of desires and temptations brings you closer to what? Towards the hellfire. So the lesson here, to get into paradise, there are obstacles that we need to overcome. Imam al-Nawawi, explaining in Sahih Muslim in some 18, 19 volumes that you find, explaining this hadith, he highlights centuries ago, there are 4 obstacles we need to overcome to come into paradise. The first obstacle that we need to develop, or we need to overcome inside our life, is al-ijtihad fil ibadat, is to strive regarding our ibadat, the fundamentals of our belief, the fundamental actions that we need to be preserving them and guarding them. As for example, the prayers that we find, حَافِظُوا عَلَى الصَّلَوَاتِ وَالصَّلَاةِ الْوُسْطَى وَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ. Guard your prayers, and especially the middle prayer, وَقَوْلُ الرَّاجِحِ. The most accurate statement is the middle prayer, Salatul Asr, and stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a state of devotion. Likewise Ramadan, performance of Hajj that we find, giving of zakah, these are all al-ibadat, the person to strive and struggle in perfecting his ibadat and striving towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second thing that he mentions is what's known as qadmul ghayb, literally swallowing one's anger. So obviously many of us may do their ibadat, that we are comfortable with our rituals, but these characteristics, you find many Muslims or many young Muslims are not able to control their anger. Literally means to be able to swallow one's anger. That's the second obstacle one needs to overcome to get into paradise. The third obstacle he mentions is al-afu, is to be able to forgive people, which once again is a very difficult obstacle to overcome. So many of us could have their ibadat, many of us get angry for reasons which are trivial, which are not for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then even if it is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're not able to pardon. Whereas the Quran, it mentions that the muttaqun, the pious individuals, are those الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي السَّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ, those who spend their time of hardships and times of goodness, which a Muslim may be able to do. Then read the rest of the characteristics. وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ, those who swallow their anger. وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ, those who swallow their anger and who pardon people, forgive them, overlook the mistakes of people or what people may say towards them. وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ, Allah loves the doers of good. Some of us were not able to carry out these characteristics. Some of us have fallen short many times in these characteristics because we only stick to certain things. You have to take Islam and eat shamil. Try your best in everything to develop that, not just to work upon certain elements and stick to them. The fourth thing that he mentioned, which concerns us, written centuries ago, is as-sabr ani shahawat, to have patience to stay away from temptations and desires. So centuries ago, Imam Nawawi says that the meaning of this hadith, to get into paradise, al-makarih, the disliked things or the obstacles a Muslim needs to overcome to get into paradise, are these 4 main elements. To become observant regarding your religious duties, obligations you have to carry out, to be able to swallow your anger, to be able to forgive mankind, and to be able to control yourself not to fall into desires. So this is a lesson for all of us, the young and the old, you need to focus upon this. And thus we find that we know that the environment has a big impact of what the ulama mentioned was known as the ghariza, the shahwa, or the desire the person has within themselves. And the wider community, the more it's full of temptation, desires, will begin to have a big impact upon the nafs of the soul of the individual to come towards that ghariza, come towards those desires. But once again, if you go back to the prophetic traditions, you find the advice of the Prophet Muhammad how to tame the desires within oneself. What do we find? Learn how to ride a horse, learn how to race, learn how to wrestle, use a sword, use a spear. All these formats, what do we find? If you learn how to swim, are all elements that tire the body. Any form of physical exertion that you find, the ulama have talked about medicine as well, they will burn and they will drown the desires of the individual. In other words, any form of hard labor, any type of physical combat or sport will break the desires of the individual and bring them down to a low level. And you can see the state of many of the Muslim youth. They're not engaged in anything. It's either one extreme to another extreme, either just mental ability, or it's social ability, or it's just spiritual ability, or it's just physical ability. The Muslim in every single ability, one's mind, one's body, one's soul, one's iman, everything that Muslim tries to strive to excel, to become the ideal, any human being or the individual. And thus we find what many of us may have studied in medicine, etc. The level of testosterone is higher in who? In men. Being classified, the higher level of testosterone is placed inside men, that they have an easier opportunity, or their desires are built upon easily. Even the Quran mentions that. Inna nafsa la'ammaratun bisu illa ma rahima rabbi. The nafs, all of us, when it's placed inside that environment, will come towards su. None of us are angels. And you look at the context of these ayat, it's talking about Yusuf alayhi salam and what took place. That the soul, if it's given the opportunity, will come towards evil. So even Yusuf alayhi salam, when he was tempted, and then when he saw the evidence, and here the ulama of the tafsir, they begin to discuss, what did he see? Some say that there was a baby in the room that spoke. Some say that he saw the image of his father, he spoke to him. Others say he heard a voice. Whatever it may be, the ulama of the tafsir have collected. But what we find, that he was able to overcome the inclinations, the whisperings that were coming towards him, the temptation. He was surrounded in an environment of full temptation, whereby the wife of the Aziz adorned herself in her beauty, and she shut the doors and exposed herself to him. But he was one who restrained himself. And that's towards the end of the surah it mentions, إِنَّهُ مَن يَتَّقِي وَيَصْبِرْ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Whoever has patient fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because taqwa is the element that takes a person away from so many different things. وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. Whoever fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides a way out for that individual and gives that person sustenance whereby they cannot imagine. So the fawaid of taqwa, thamarat of taqwa are many. That Yusuf alayhi salam, إِنَّهُ مَن يَتَّقِي وَيَصْبِرْ. Whoever fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is patient, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never let the action or doers of good go to waste. And thus we can see that how the woman herself acknowledged her mistake. All the women acknowledged their mistake, and he was made bari, made free from what they attributed towards Yusuf alayhi salam. Another lesson that we can extract regarding young individuals inside Surah Yusuf alayhi salam, we find the 12th chapter of the Quran. A side point, those of us who may have not read the surah, it is the only one surah in the Quran that begins with a story and ends with a story. It's the only one surah. Begins with a story and travels all the way until the end of the surah, and the end of the surah begins to talk about some other topics. But in general, some 100 or so ayat that we find are talking all about the life and the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. And some of the ulama tafsir have mentioned that this surah is sent down, what is described as Aam al-Huzn, the year of grief upon the Prophet Muhammad, that he was going through difficulties. His wife Khadija has passed away, and the hardships that the Quraysh had placed upon him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down this surah upon the Prophet Muhammad to see, look at how the previous Prophet Yusuf what he went through and the difficulties that he went through. And not to sound too mystical, at times you're feeling upset or sad, go back and read this surah, and you'll see that the problems we face in our daily life are very trivial to what Yusuf had to go through in his life. Anyhow, what concerns us here at the beginning of the surah is the brethren of Yusuf that they decide, because of their jealousy towards him, that they decide either to kill him, or then they decide that we should throw him into the well. And then what did they make the statement? وَتَكُونُ مِن بَعْدِهِ قَوْمًا صَالِحِينَ. After we do this evil action, then we're going to come back and become what? Righteous and pious individuals. That mantiq, that logic that existed centuries ago, you know what? It exists even today. Because how many Muslims think exactly the same? How many Muslims they think, I'll do haram all my life, or when I become al-hajj, or become like you at the age of 40, whatever it may be, or I marry or settle down, then I'll come back and become a good Muslim. That's what many of the youth they think. In emotion, they know better than us what's halal, what's haram. Many people, they know better than us, because they're telling us, all they're quoting ahadith to us, quoting Quran to us, telling us, teaching us every single day. But once again, the amal is not there, or they're trying to play games with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's Quran mentions, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. Don't become like those individuals who forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make you forget your own selves. What is the meaning of forgetting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Forgetting means is turning away from the sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, turning away from that which is halal and going towards that which is haram. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes you forget your own self, what your intent is and what you're doing. Likewise, the Quran mentions harsh words, that whoever وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا وَنَحْشُرُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَعْمَى قَالَ رَبِّ لِمَ حَشَرْتَنِي أَعْمَى وَقَدْ كُنْتُ بَصِيرًا قَالَ كَذَلِكَ أَتَتْكَ آيَاتُنَا فَنَسِيتَهَا وَكَذَلِكَ الْيَوْمَ تُنْسَى. Inside Surah Taha that we find, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي. Whoever turns away from the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, turns away from it, you find two promises of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That person, that individual, will have what? Ma'ishatan danka, will have a restricted life, will have a troublesome life. There will be no peace, no tranquility, no serenity, nothing inside their life. Wa'adullahi subhanahu wa ta'ala upon this earth. That's the first promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you can study that in great detail in people who turn away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then comes the second promise. وَنَحْشُرُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَعْمَى كَفِيفٌ ضَرِيرٌ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raise him up on the day of judgment, blind. قَالَ رَبِّ لِمَا حَشَرْتَنِي أَعْمَى. Oh my Lord, why are you making me blind today? وَقَدْ كُنْتُ بَصِيرًا. I could see when I was upon this earth. I had the visibility to see. Why am I blind today? The answer is given. Because you know, upon this earth, our signs were shown to you. What are the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? أَمَّا آيَاتُ الْكَوْنِيَّةِ, the heavenly signs all around us. سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقِّ. We show them our signs all around them in the heavens, the earth, the horizon. It will establish that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the truth, is the reality, the only one that needs to be worshipped, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. Even within your own selves, we show you our signs, you begin to recognize. Can you not see them? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one that needs to be worshipped. إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ لَآيَاتٍ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ الَّذِينَ يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِهِمْ وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا سُبْحَانَكَ فَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Indeed, the creation, the heavens and the earth, the changing of the night and the day, are signs for men of understanding, those who stand, those who bow down, those who prostrate, who reflect over all of this. رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا. Oh our Lord, you haven't created this in vanity. There must be a purpose. These are all ayatul kawniyah that drives the individual to begin to reflect and recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ وَإِلَى السَّمَاءِ كَيْفَ رُفِعَتْ. Don't you look at the hump of the camel, how it stores the water. Don't you look at the heavens, the earth, the land. All of these are signs for the individual to come back and reflect and to recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is one meaning of ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The other meaning of ayatul Quran, the verses of the Quran which are clear, that a person doesn't see the signs, the verses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have an impact upon that individual, because the Quran that we find is very powerful in nature that we find. In this Quran, the same ayat, inside Surah Al-Hashr towards the end, لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون. We sent this Quran down upon a mountain, it will turn the mountain into what? Into dust, into crumbs. That's the power of the Quran. But the Quran has come where? Upon the hearts of us human beings. And that's amongst the first parables inside Surah Al-Baqarah that we find, that there are stones that you find that water gushes out of them. Some of them you strike them, you find that water gushes out of them. And amongst them, يعني يحبط من خشية الله. Some stones, rocks, they fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How can a rock fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created that even the rock recognizes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is the intent of this matter, this parable? That if a rock fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then why doesn't the soft heart of the human being fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? أَلَمْ يَأْنِ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَمَا نَزَلَ مِنَ الْحَقِّ. Has not the time come for the hearts of the believers that their hearts become soft and lenient with the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That's the power of the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَيَطْمَئِنُّ قُلُوبُهُم بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبُ. Indeed, the believers are those individuals, their heart find tranquility and rest with what? With the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those are the real believers. الَّذِينَ وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُم, that their hearts begin to quiver and shake with the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَإِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُهُ زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا وَعَلَى رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ. When the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala recited upon them, it increases them in iman and they place their trust upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So those are the ayat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown and highlighted to us. Likewise, in the night journey that we find the Prophet Muhammad sees a person coming out of the water surrounded by blood, and every time the person, a rock is being thrown into that face or into the head of that individual. Who is that individual at the end of the long hadith that we find? That is an individual, الَّذِي نَامَ عَنِ الْقُرْآنِ, the person who learned the Qur'an and slept away from the Qur'an. بمعنى never implemented the Qur'an. الْقُرْآنُ حُجَّةٌ لَكَ أَوْ حُجَّةٌ عَلَيْكَ. The Qur'an is an evidence for you or evidence against you. Not just the recitation of the Qur'an, it's the implementation of the Qur'an. So that is dangerous, turning away from the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because you turn away, you forgot the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَكَذَلِكَ الْيَوْمَ تُنْسَى. That's today you have been forgotten by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we fail to understand the time, the maximum opportunity or focus of the life of the individual is in that prime time. In that opportunity to focus oneself towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thus you find this strange hadith, وعن عقبة مرفوعا إن ربك ليعجب للشاب لا صبوة له. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala marvels at a young boy, a young individual, لا صبوة له, has no, بمعنى لا يميل إلى الهوى, doesn't go towards desires. Imam al-Mannawi explained his hadith, صاحب فيض القدير, mentions فإن هذا شيء عجيب or شيء نادر. This is something very, very rare because most people want to come towards desires. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is praising the one individual or a young individual who breaks one's desires and doesn't come towards them. So this individual, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is praising this individual, and this is something very, very rare, but it's not something which is impossible. Likewise, a discussion begins to take place amongst the ulama of tazkiyah that a person who makes a mistake and then repents and becomes a better individual, is that person, young person, a better individual, or a person who never ever entered into anything haram? So a long discussion begins to take place. Some of them begin to favor a person who never ever journeyed through haram is far better than a person who may have done something incorrect, fall into shahwat desires, and then repented. But what we can extract, that obviously the task is what? It is a difficult task. There's no doubt it is a difficult task, especially in the new 21st century that we live in, the modern world that we live in. It's become even more difficult. But that difficult task means what? An immense reward. What is the immense reward that we're given to those individuals? And that is, as we mentioned, the 7 individuals, or the category, the types of individuals under the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. سَبْعَةٌ يُظِلُّهُمُ اللَّهُ فِي ظِلِّهِ يَوْمَ لَا ظِلَّ إِلَّا ظِلُّهُ. 7 types of individuals will be under the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whereby there will be no shade. Amongst the 7 individuals that we find, Imamun Adil, the just Imam, وَشَابٌ نَشَأَ فِي عِبَادَةِ اللَّهِ subhanahu wa ta'ala, which concerns us here, the young boy or the young girl who spent their life worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not the end of their life, or an elderly individual, a person gone to the age of 50 or 60, that's normal. That's normal for an individual who gets, excuse expression, 1 foot inside the grave, to begin to make tawbah, to begin to repent, to come to the masjid frequently. That's normal. That's something khair, something good. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want that. Because that's a normal, only a senile person would stay away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that end of their life. But it's the prime time of one's life. Shabun نشأ في عبادة الله سبحانه وتعالى. The second category, just to complete the hadith, وَرَجُلٌ قَلْبُهُ مُعَلَّقٌ بِالْمَسَاجِدِ, a man whose heart is linked to the masjid. Hadith, another hadith I find which is da'if, which is weak, but the believer finds himself in the masjid like a person in an ocean, and in the heart is open. But a munafiq finds himself inside the masjid like what? Like a bird in a cage. So if you come to the masjid, you find any qada', you find restriction, you find difficulty, you find confusion within yourself. Why am I inside the masjid? فَهَذَا نَوْعٌ مِنَ النِّفَاقِ. It's an element of hypocrisy. The believer finds tranquility and happiness inside the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So man whose heart is attached to the masjid. In a sahih hadith that we find, the individual who visits the masjid frequently, فَاشْهَدْ لَهُ الْإِيمَانِ, testify that individual has what? Iman, who comes to the masjid frequently. So many people, once again, they come and they say Salatul Jama'ah, anywhere you can go and pray. Possibly true. So what's the point in building the masjid then? If you can pray Salatul Jama'ah wherever you want to go and pray, wherever you are with the Jama'ah, then what's the intent of the masjid? Why do we find Bashiru Basharina bil-layl, give the glad tidings of individuals who are walking in the night, the depths of the night. What is the depths of the night? Salatul Fajr and Salatul Isha. They're still coming towards the masjid. That's a sign of Iman. A sign of hypocrisy is what? The person drags themselves to come for Salatul Fajr, doesn't want to pray Salatul Fajr, or doesn't want to come for Salatul Isha inside the masjid. That's an element of hypocrisy. Sign of Iman is a person wants to come to Fajr. A person begins to question themselves. Read the life of the Sahaba. If one of them missed Salatul Jama'ah, they would hide. They would hide from the other companions, they missed it. And then secretly go hide in the crevices and secretly go and pray. And that's they used to conclude. Anybody who missed Salatul Jama'ah, either they were traveling or they were severely ill. And you know, as a side point, even the munafiqun never miss prayer behind who? Behind the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, lest they be spotted. And what do we do today? We don't care much about it. Every day we miss Fajr bil Jama'ati. It's not that important. It doesn't mean much. Miss Isha bil Jama'ati doesn't mean much. What do you mean it doesn't mean much? That is a sign of Iman. That's a sign of the pillar of Islam, of devotion. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. Successful are the individuals, those pious individuals who are submissive inside their prayers, those who guard their prayers, preserve their prayers. That's an element. So many of us may begin to fall into other issues and begin to worry about them, which is good, which is khair. And then we begin to lose track and focus upon this element. And thus we find the hadith of Mu'jam Imam Tabarani, إنما أول ما يحاسب العبد عليه يوم القيامة is as-sala'u kama qala sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The first thing the person will ask about the day of judgment will be their prayers. First thing, then everything else, then everything will come after that. So if we're not really bothered about it, we find it trivial, we find it something petty, or what's this got to do with the impact of the rising of the Muslim Ummah, whatever it may be, then you can see that there will be no rising. Even the blessed land of Palestine at the moment may sound very, very harsh. Go and see how many people come for Salatul Fajr Masjid al-Aqsa. Go and see how many people يَحْتَمُونَ بِصَلَاتِهِمْ, who are worried about their prayers, focus upon their prayers. The answer is very simple in the Sharia. It's very simple. Yes, we have external enemies, whatever it may be, but our biggest enemy is who? Is our own nafs, our own self. That's what needs to be conquered and ruled and governed over. And we begin to understand the element, that these are the elements of dignity that rise the Muslim Ummah once again towards and either success. Likewise, just to complete the hadith that we find, وَرَجُلَانِ تَحَابَّ فِي اللَّهِ اجْتَمَعَ عَلَيْهِ وَتَفَرَّقَ عَلَيْهِ. Two individuals who come together for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they separate upon that. They haven't come together because of wealth, or property, or fame, or friendship upon this dunya. They've come for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they separate upon that. That's the only reason why they meet and they are together. Thus you find that this bond, or khuwa Islamiyah, that you find, that sometimes the Islamic brotherhood makes a stronger link between oneself and another individual, even than your own blood brother. That's what Iman does. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ. Indeed, believers are brothers towards one another. That's the bond of faith. Thus you find that naturally a person, when a person is upon any kufr, fusuq, isyan, even if it happens to be your own blood relative, what happens? You find a repulsive feeling towards them. You don't want to be with them, but people of Iman, that you want to be what? They are closer to you than even your own, any blood relatives and your ties that we all have. Fourthly, we find وَرَجُلٌ دَعَتْهُ إِمْرَأَةٌ ذَاتُ مَنْصَبٍ وَجَمَالٍ فَقَالَ إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهِ. Once again, concerning a young individual, that a beautiful woman of lineage, of honor, of dignity makes a pass for an individual, and likewise it could be the opposite. The woman could be tempted as well. And what does the person say? قَالَ إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهِ. I fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is another individual or that category that will be under the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whereby there will be no shade. وَرَجُلٌ تَصَدَّقَ بِصَدَقَةٍ فَأَخْفَاهَا حَتَّى لَا تَعْلَمَ شِمَالُهُ مَا تُنْفِقُ يَمِينُهُ. Person who hides the giving of their charity, giving of their wealth, that the left hand doesn't know what the right hand has spent. And seventhly, we find وَرَجُلٌ ذَكَرَ اللَّهَ خَالِيًا فَفَاضَتْ عَيْنَاهُ. A person who remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with sincerity, all in his own or on her own, and the person begins to shed tears, remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hadith in the Sahihain of Imam Bukhari and Muslim. These are the seven different types of individuals or the categories. You find that one of the ulama, Imam Ibn Abdul Barr al-Andalusi, he mentions فَإِنَّ هَذَا الْحَدِيث أَفْضَلُ الْحَدِيث فِي الْفَضَائِلِ. The best book or the best hadith on fada'il, on virtues, is this one hadith. That's one of the ulama. He wrote mujalladan. He wrote 2 complete volumes. Each volume some 500 pages. وَأَسَاسُ شَرْحِ هَذَا الْحَدِيث. And the essence of those 1,000 pages is this one hadith. That the Shaykh begins to expand this one hadith, talking about these category individuals. And what do these individuals share? What is it that all of these 7 categories that they share, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed them under the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? اشتراكهم في مخالفة أهوائهم. They all share of breaking their desires. Each one of them breaks their desires to gain it. Imam Adil, why a just Imam? Because most of the, not to sound too political, the Imma around us, meaning the Hukam that we find, what do we find around us? Are they just? Are they fair? So a just Imam is very rare. Because a person knows that when I'm in power and control the Sultan, he can do whatever he wants to do. He can punish whomever he wants, torture whomever he wants, take from whoever he wants, do whatever he wants to do. But the just Imam does what? He breaks his desires. Because he's doing it for who? Lillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he breaks that control and the power, that egoism that we find many of these people around us. It's their ego. Their ego is driving them. The ego is something very, very dangerous. You can't place a price tag upon the ego of an individual. And that's what some of these people that they have. People may hint to them, people may advise them, people may write something in a mild manner or point to something, and what happens? You find that people's heads will begin to roll, because this is a threat towards my kingdomship, towards my sovereignty, towards my power, my governance, my ruling, my authority. These people need to go. So that's Imam Adil, the just Imam, will be one under the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise you find Shabun, who grows up in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is breaking what? The desires. As we began with, every young individual has desires. If a person says, I don't have desires, there must be something wrong with them. So every individual is sharing that, breaking the desire. Likewise the one who's spending his wealth is breaking desire. The person loves wealth. لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. You're never going to attain piety till you don't spend of the things that you love. So all these individuals are sharing that element of breaking the desires and moving away from the desires, so they can come under the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise you find that in general, all of us will be asked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about our life, about our wealth, about our knowledge, and even more so what will happen, وَعَنْ شَبَابِهِ فِيمَا أَفْنَاهُ. Regarding when we were young, what did we do with our young days? So it's not going to ask about our later days. What did we do? So our feet won't move on the day of judgment until they're asked about all about these 5 elements. What did we do whilst we were young individuals? Did we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or spend our life appropriately? In the hadith, in the Sunan of Imam Tirmidhi. Thus you find many of the Salaf used to mention such statements, Ya ma'ashara shabab, i'malu. O young individuals, carry out actions. Strive in doing actions. فَإِنِّي رَأَيْتُ الْعَمَلْ فِي الشَّبَابِ هُوَ الْقُوَّةِ. Indeed, I've seen that doing actions whilst a young individual is strength, is power, is dignity. Just like the sun. You find the shams that you find for shamsu la tamla'u an-nahar fi akhirih kama tamla'u fi awwalihi. The sun that we find in the beginning of the sun, going past the meridian, is the peak time of its life. And as it begins to descend and it begins to come down, it begins to, the time just before Maghrib that we find, it's still classified as the sun, but it's weak. The most powerful time of the sun is right in the middle. And likewise, a powerful time of a young individual is when the sun is rising at its powerful point. That is when the young individual strives in serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, other individuals are mentioned, and you find that the young individual, the human being, is like a tree. And thus you find that a tree, towards the end of its life, it loses its fruits, loses its benefits. There may be some trees that give fawaid at a later stage, at the end of their life. But the general sunnah of ashjar is a certain peak time that it gives its fruits. Then after that, it just becomes khashab, just becomes an empty bark, just becomes wood. Still could be called a tree, but it's just khashab, it doesn't have much to give, to offer. So when is the tree life of the human being? The tree life of the human being is when it gives its fruits, it gives the blossom, it gives the benefits, is when the person is young. After that, you still could be a tree, but you are an empty tree. So that is the tree that we want to be, the tree that gives fruits at all times when we're young, and then those fruits begin to develop later on inside the end of our life as well. And that's you find in Surah Ibrahim, you find the parable is given of the goodly tree. The goodly tree is the tree that you find lives upon the life of kalimat tayyibah, it lives a life of qawlu thabit, la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. That's you find the good word is like a good tree that you find has a strong, firm, its roots are firm in the earth, and its branches going up in the heavens. وَتُؤْتِي أُكُلُهَا كُلَّ حِينٍ بِإِذْنِ رَبِّهَا. And every so often it begins to give its fruits, give its benefits. So when will we be able to develop those benefits? Especially when we are young and focused, inshallah, individuals. So we need to go back and look at the role of those individuals who came before us. The role of the youth that previously came, as the Quran mentions, الَّذِينَ اسْتَجَابُوا لِلَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ. Those who responded to the call of Allah and the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Who were most of those individuals? If you look carefully, they were young individuals. مُعْظَمُ الصَّحَابَةِ, most of the companions were what? They were young individuals. We go back and read the seerah in great detail, that the sacrifices they made and what they overcame, and serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then serving the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Likewise, you find inside Surah Al-Kahf as well, before we move into the main field of the companions, you look at Surah Al-Kahf, what do we find? That those young individuals, إِنَّهُمْ فِتْيَةٌ آمَنُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ وَزِدْنَاهُمْ هُدًى. They were young boys, young men, who believed in their Lord, and we did what? We increased them in guidance. So the Quran is praising that the young individuals who remain focused, that we increase them inside knowledge and understanding and in wisdom and in devotion and commitment. Likewise, you read the tafsir of Surah Al-Buruj, you read the tafsir of Ibn Kathir, what do you find? The main theme talking about who? Al-Malik wal-Ghulam, the boy and the king. One boy, young individual, devoted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that makes what happens, what takes place? A whole empire crumbles. The whole kingdom crumbles because why? Of this young individual remaining steadfast. There was no way to kill him except for the way that the boy highlighted, that you have to take an arrow from my quiver, from my bag, from my sack, take an arrow, and then you take that arrow with my bow, and you say, in the name of the Lord of of this boy, and then aim that arrow towards my forehead, my temple here, and you'll be able to kill me. And when the king does that, he shoots that arrow and the boy dies. What did people begin to say? We believe in the Lord of the boy. We believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The mission has been completed. That is exactly what he feared. Exactly what he feared, and that's exactly what began to take place. But it was the iman of the young individual who carried out the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remained steadfast all the way until meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like what we mentioned, look at the masses of the companions, read through their life, young individuals, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, أعلم هذه الأمة بالحلال والحرام. Mu'adh ibn Jabal, young boy, is classified as what? The most knowledgeable regarding halal and haram. Today what do we find? Do we find that? Do we find young individuals aspiring to be fuqaha, to be ulama? Do you find that? Very rare, nadir, isn't it? Most young individuals couldn't care less. So we can see what begins to take place inside the future. Likewise, we find Ibn Abbas, Abdullah ibn Abbas, young individual, classified as what? Turjuman al-Quran, the one who explained the Quran, because the Prophet Muhammad placed his mantle, his cloak over him and prayed for him, Allahumma faqihu fi deen wa allimhu at-ta'wil, give him deep understanding of the deen, wa allimhu at-ta'wil, ta'wil bima'na tafsir, and give him deep understanding regarding the Quran. So thus he had the best understanding of tafsir of the Quran, the ayat of the Quran. Thus his famous student Imam Mujahid said, I read the Quran verse by verse, every single verse at least 3 times, and I've got the explanation from Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma. Why? Prayed by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam for this young individual, leading the people inside prayer as a young individual. These are the companions that we find, we need to go back and read in the life and begin, you need to understand about them. Usama bin Zayd, the age of not more than being 20, the final expedition of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he places who? Usama bin Zayd as the leader of the whole of the army. So even some of the elderly companions begin to think, how is that possible? A young boy at the age of 20, we've got so much experience. How can the Prophet Muhammad place Usama bin Zayd in that position? The Prophet Muhammad passes away from this dunya, so maybe that's an opportunity to change, place somebody more experienced there. What does Abu Bakr do? Guess what? He keeps Usama bin Zayd. Because if he's been chosen by the Prophet Muhammad, there's no need to remove him, irrespective of his age. But there must be wisdom, there must be devotion, there must be commitment that the Prophet Muhammad selected him. Likewise, you find many individuals that think that maybe the companions don't know about a good life. They don't know about the modern world of dressing well, looking well, enjoying this dunya. Read the life of Musab ibn Umayr. Read about his life, how he used to dress, his silk garments, his perfume used to come from Yemen. If you walk past in the marketplace in Mecca, everybody knew. Everybody knew that, Musab ibn Umayr had just walked past us. That's the life that he lived, that he had. But then when he became a Muslim, if you read through his seerah, if I'm not mistaken, the battle of Uhud that we find, whereby his arm is amputated, his left arm is amputated, and eventually falls shaheed. And you find that what happens, the companions, when they go to bury him, and they find that there's a cloth, when they cover his head, his feet begin to show. When they cover his feet, his head begins to show. And some of them begin to weep and think, this is the same Musab ibn Umayr who wore the best garments, who wore the best clothing, and today we cannot even cover his body today. So they asked the messenger, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what should we do? He said, cover his head sallallahu alaihi wasallam and leave his feet and place idkhir, the green grass, upon his feet and bury him in that manner. Many of the companions, they wept. This is the same individual what's happened to him today. But obviously he made a greater journey. So they made many sacrifices. Don't think we are the only ones that we see the things of the dunya and we're facing difficulties. The companions, as we mentioned, they had those desires, they had those temptations. Many of them, they overcame them. And thus they became those fine individuals. Those famous quotations that we find, we were people that were lost, we were people that were any barbaric people that we were. And we find that Islam took us from dunya, from the restriction of this earth, and took us where? To the light of glory, of victory. And thus you find the companions, this isn't history, this is the reality. Barefooted individuals, disheveled state, ripped clothing. You know what they did? They conquered this earth. That's what they did. Because why? Because that iman and that faith that they had. And that's that Islam, the blessing of Islam was the greatest thing that they discovered. Alhamdulillah, alladhi hadana lihada wa ma kunna linahtadiya lawla an hadana Allah. Praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, guided us to this, to al-Islam. That's the greatest ultimate blessing upon all of us. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided us to Islam, we don't know where we would be. Could be mushrikun, disbelievers, atheists, juhal, fusaq, whatever person could be. But Islam is the one that came and reformed those individuals and reforms all of us to bring out the best of the individual. And that is exactly what will reform the youth. When people talk about projects of this and projects of that, it's just the simple message of Islam. The beauty and the orthodox teaching of Islam will automatically reform the youth. Our youth may be bad, may be evil, or whatever it may be, but in comparison to many of the companions that you find, it's still trivial. The type of life that some of the companions live, you'd be shocked by what they carried out throughout their life and how Islam came and it purified them. Thus you find Allah waliyul ladina amanu yukhrijuhum min al-dhulumati ila an-nur. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the wali, is a protector of those who believe, takes them out from the realms of darknesses and brings them where? To the light of Islam. Likewise, read the life of Zayd bin Thabit. Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu anhu was the one who's the scribe who used to write for the Prophet Muhammad and write the Quran, preserve it. And as we find, you look at the compilation of the Quran inside the beginning of Sahih al-Bukhari, that we find the beginning of the compilation of the Quran. Abu Bakr went to who? He went to Zayd bin Thabit and asked him to write. And then what did he say about him? He said, إِنَّكَ لَرَجُلٌ شَابٌ. You are a young individual and we have no blame upon you, and you are intelligent and a sharp-witted individual, and we want you to write the Quran once again. So he was a young individual who wrote for the Prophet Muhammad, now writing once again at the time of Abu Bakr and as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. Al-Hasan wal-Husayn, classified as what? The two young individuals, the leaders of the young individuals were in paradise, to read about their life and their devotion and in their commitment. Likewise, read the life of other young individuals. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz has been classified as the fifth Khalifa. Read about his life. You find Imam Ayyub al-Sakhtiyani, Imam al-Shafi'i, Imam Malik, Imam Ahmad. Read about their life. Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, Imam Sufyan ibn Uyayna. Read through the life. Young individuals, how they were devoted towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Read the life of Imam al-Nawawi, as we began with. At the age of 10, if you go and pick up Riyadh al-Salihin, you read the introduction and Muqaddamah talking about his life. At the age of 10, whilst the children were telling him to come outside and play, he used to cry. He didn't want to play with the kids. He wanted to get on with his studies. I'm not saying that we should stop our youth from playing football or whatever it may be, but we need to create work upon certain individuals, that we begin to train them to become people of lofty goals and lofty aspirations. If we just think of becoming the average Muslim, then it will be the average results. And the Quran mentions, وَاصْبِرْ كَمَا صَبَرَ أُولُو الْعَزْمِ مِنَ الرُّسُلِ. Have patience and commitment and devotion like the five blessed Anbiya, beginning with Nuh alayhi salam, and then Musa and Ibrahim wa Isa wa Nabiyyuna Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Remain committed. Read about the life of these individuals. Ibrahim alayhi salam, read about his life. A young boy who challenged the idols, who spoke out against his people. And as they said that, indeed we heard about a young boy who's done this to our idols, speaking ill of our idols. Bring this young boy in front of us. I remain committed. Nuh alayhi salam, talking to his people for how long? 950 years. قَالَ رَبِّ إِنِّي دَعُوتُ قَوْمِي لَيْلًا وَنَهَارًا. Oh my Lord, I call my people day and night, in public, in secret. Every time I called them, they thrust their fingers in their ears, they took their garments and they placed it over their heads. That's how rude the people were. But what did Nuh alayhi salam do? He bared that. He carried on that journey. Isa alayhi salam, what they attributed to him, that you are the son of a woman who committed adultery. He bore that, carried on his journey. And that's when he praised his mother, that she was a pure woman. And likewise, most of them, the most amongst them who was in difficulties, Musa alayhi salam, and then you find the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they all persevered in their life. And that's the lesson that we take from their life, to persevere, to carry out that journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, you find if it wasn't any amongst, people may think about the scholars and these blessed individuals. How about look at the life of some of the conquerors? Go and look at their life. You find amongst them Muhammad ibn Qasim al-Thaqafi, was known as Fatih al-Sindi wal-Hind. Muhammad ibn Qasim, the one who conquered and ruled over the land of Sind at the moment, the area to the side of Pakistan that we find al-Hind in India as well, who ruled and governed and conquered at what age? 17 years old. 17 years old is classified as a person who conquered the whole of that region. Like when you read about the life of the class Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih, at the age of what, 14? His father made him the Sultan at the age of 10, and at the age of 14 he takes out his first troops. And then he calls his father's gone into retirement, into seclusion. His father says, look, I'm not going to come out and lead this battle. That's your task now. So he says to his father, that if you made me the Sultan, then not as your son, as a Sultan I command you to come out and to lead this battle and expedition. Look at the understanding of this young individual. Our young individuals can't care less what's taking place in the world. As long as we get our fish and chips and whatever it may be and enjoy our life, that's what that concerns us. I'm not saying that we should go out and we should rebel or whatever it may be. I'm trying to highlight at the end of the day, if you want to gain lofty goals, it's taken 150 years to dismantle our people and to break it all apart. So it's going to be a very long journey to build the bridge once again. So we need to build that bridge.
The future will always be bright with what? With the shabab, with the youth. If the shabab become corrupt, then that is the downfall of this Muslim ummah. So we need to revive that once again about the youth and the young individuals. And the side point, inshallah, we're all young. Because according to Sharia, linguistically, anybody under the age of 40 is classified as what? A young individual. So those of you who might be slightly 40, don't put your hand up. Then you're slightly going to be on that limit. Apart from that, the rest of us, inshallah, are very close. You know, some of us are very close to 40. Alhamdulillah. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the tawfiq and ability to become amongst those individuals الَّذِينَ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقَوْلَ فَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَحْسَنَهُ. We hear the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and follow it to the best of their ability inside their lives. And we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take our youth away from the fasad and the corruption, to bring them back to a life of purity and devotion and to commitment, and to keep all of us away from the ma'asi, the dhunub, the sins, the fawahish, ma dhahara minha wa ma batan. وأقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولجميع المسلمين فاستغفروا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. سبحانك وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. بارك الله فيكم.